space. Every second of every minute of every day for over 900 years. I fought for peace in a universe at war. Now the time has come to face the choices I've made in the name of the Doctor. Our future depends on one single moment of one impossible day. The day I've been running from all my life. The day of the Doctor.
Hello everyone and welcome once again to GeekFest Rants. My name is Carlos Perron and joining me once again I have James here. Say hi, James.
Hello, hello.
Today we are continuing with our theme of Doctor Who, which we kind of started last week, and in all reality we started that months ago. But last week was almost a countdown to what was happening this week, which is the 50th anniversary special. We've already given you guys the background of what we were going to talk about and the background of the history of these shows, but this was a real big one, and as you remember, we had all kinds of theories of what they can possibly do, what we would like them to do, and here it is. We're going to give you the information of what actually they gave us, whether or not we're happy with it, whether or not they delivered on what was promised or what we hope would be given. But let's start with the show itself. James, tell me what you thought of the actual show on its entirety.
I thought the show was perfect. I thought it was brilliant. I had a great time watching it, to the point where it would have brought tears to my eyes if I were a lesser man.
Do you think they kept quiet in terms of they were able to keep some secrets, or was it everything pretty much the way you expected it?
Actually, after seeing it, a lot of the trailer, as most trailers are, gave a good portion of it. We were just expecting so much craziness that I couldn't even believe the trailer. So I just took those scenes and tried to extrapolate it, and I didn't really know what to make of it. Once I saw it, the trailer made sense.
Well, let's talk a little bit about story-wise. It's a special. It's not just like the greatest hits type of special. It's an actual story that's being given to you, and now this story is canon with the entire, franchise. So where are we with the story as far as, we actually left off at a different place, and it brought us to this one. So where are we in the story itself?
Well, this episode had to be the Abbey Road, of Doctor Who. This episode had to be The Empire Strikes Back. It had to be everything that fans love. This episode had to be Doctor Who's version of it, because anything less would be a letdown. And I think it hit on all cylinders. And the reason why is they used various mediums to get to the final point. Granted, the episode was an episode, like I said, but it had a lot of friends on its way there, kind of like the Doctor. And so the episode picked up basically where the last episode, The Name of the Doctor, ended, with John Hurt. Who is John Hurt? What is going on with John Hurt? But it didn't just go right from A to B. There were a few little lines in between.
Right. And what's also important to talk about is the fact that not only is the 50th anniversary special what's delivering to us the information, there were also a lot of side little things that they were producing in the meantime that was aired that gave us even more information. I don't know if you want to call it supplemental material, but it's material that fills in even more gaps that the 50th anniversary doesn't cover.
Well, like I said, it had a lot of friends along the way. And by friends, I'm saying there were other medium. This show was anticipated probably as soon as the show was rebooted in 2005. Everybody knew the 50th anniversary was on its way. And I have a feeling most people figured David Tennant would have been the guy who got us there. But when he decided to leave, it became Matt Smith's role. Once Matt Smith decided he too would leave, everybody panicked. You can't really establish a new Doctor and have a 50th anniversary. People have to have something to root for, something to attach to. And if a new Doctor were to take over, while the show probably would still be successful, it would be a lot harder to celebrate a show with, having a guy who just left. So everybody wanted a multiple Doctor story. Everybody wanted to see as many Doctors as were still alive, or they could figure out a way to put together. And that just wasn't going to happen here. Sadly, the guys didn't look the same. Some of them are dead. Some of them are just, not able to fit the suit anymore, so to speak. And Stephen Moffat, who is a fan himself, and this episode and the events surrounding this episode really make me understand him more. He's not just producing a show. He's producing a show that he loved growing up. It's kind of like what's going to happen with Star Wars and J.J. Abrams. I'm not so convinced because there's too many hands in that bowl of soup there, but it's kind of the same thing. J.J. loves Star Wars. Stephen Moffat loves Doctor Who. And it turns out he gave everybody what they want. So, A, you can't have all the doctors in the same episode. Well, what do you do? Well, people really clamored for more Paul McGann.
Right.
You've had a return of Peter Davidson in a small little mini-sode, they call it, with David Tennant. That was really pleasing. Well, it's tough to put Colin Baker back in his suit. He's a bigger man. Sylvester McCoy could do the job, but if you can't put Colin Baker in the suit, it's tough to work Sylvester McCoy in directly. So then there's Paul McGann. Paul McGann still looked good. People want more Paul McGann. He's the most successful of the doctors in the audio recordings by Big Finish. So a surprise was handed to us in the form of The Night of the Doctor.
It's like a mini episode.
A prequel mini episode. And it starts out basically with somebody saying, you called for a doctor,
right,
but I'm not the one you expect, basically. It's, paraphrasing his line. And it's Paul McGann. And it blew my mind. I watched it and I couldn't believe it. And I was thrilled that he would even be back. And he's slightly different looking. His hair's different, but it's Paul McGann. And that was basically the first step, not counting the reveal of John Hurt. That was basically the first step that we're in for something special. The fact that Moffat gave the fans a little more Paul McGann.
Now, let me ask you a question. The way we jump into this mini episode, does it in any way tie in to the last time we saw this particular actor playing this character? Or is it kind of fresh that we're thrown into a new adventure?
It's kind of fresh because now he's in the middle of the Time War.
Okay.
And we've heard of the Time War. Everybody knows of the Time War. It's basically the big bad of overarch of Doctor Who, the Time War. This Time War changed him, affected him, hurt him, all these different things. And it ended the Time Lords. So having him was fantastic. The next thing, however, is he's got to change, and he changes into John Hurt. He regenerates into John Hurt in this episode.
So there's the link.
And there's the link. He is now the Eighth Doctor. John Hurt is the War Doctor. We can only assume John Hurt becomes Eccleston.
Right.
But we don't know that. At this point, for our intents and purposes, we don't know.
Maybe that's for the 75th anniversary.
No. So that was really satisfying, that particular mini-sode. And a lot of people loved it. A lot of people were thrilled. I'm sure there were a number of people, new fans, who maybe didn't really pay attention to the old stuff, that were not quite getting what it was. But to old fans who had followed it all along, you want to connect the dots, and this was another way to properly connect the dots. If they're going to bring John Hurt back, you get to see how he becomes who he is.
So now that we know where at least John Hurt's doctor came from, or, what his origins are, let's talk a little bit about, okay, where are we now then?
Well, the next presentation in the 50th anniversary group of specials, let's call it, is called An Adventure in Time and Space. Yes. And that's basically a pure love letter to the fans. It's a making of docudrama of the beginnings of Doctor Who. From the very beginning of the idea, the casting, the creation, the ideas of how they got the sets, all these things. And while I'm sure it's been prettied up, it was really, really special. It made you really feel something for the initial team that put it together, and how 50 years later it can still be such an important part of especially the science fiction world, but it's become a lot bigger than just science fiction fans. A lot of fans have joined in over the years. And the actor, David Bradley, who played the first Doctor, did a really, really great performance. He's known mostly as Finch from the Harry Potter series.
Remember we mentioned him
and
last
he's
time.
been in a Doctor Who episode. Well, he blew me away. The whole production really was special. And I think if you're just even a casual fan, you'll appreciate what's going on in this. And it basically builds to the ending of the first Doctor's tenure when they came up with regeneration, because he became too ill to work day to day. Wow. And they didn't want to lose the show. And somebody came up with an idea saying, well, he's an alien. We can come up with a new face. He'll just change. And they didn't have the word regeneration back then, but basically that was the start of it, and it was perfect. And it really is what made the show be able to continue to this day. Now, I imagine if the show had been able to continue without any break in between those dark times, I'm sure we would have been past Matt Smith's number by now. But the bridge between the character of the first Doctor was shown with a special surprise cameo by Matt Smith. It was really special seeing the two together. I think any fan kind of brought a tear to their eye a little bit, made him a little sad that it's too bad that the people have to go, but there's always somebody new to keep the show going. And I think that's what's made it special over the years.
Well, let's talk about the actual set piece now of the whole presentation, which is the Day of the Doctor, the actual episode, the actual special.
The plan was to put together the greatest story in the life of the Doctor. And little secrets would come out. I'm assuming they were leaks, but you never know anymore how things, if they're leaked or if they're put out on purpose. But it was revealed that basically the only Doctor that would work alongside Matt Smith was David Tennant. You know, obviously one of the most popular Doctors ever. So it disappointed a lot of older fans, including myself. I was actually pretty annoyed because it felt to me, if you're having just those two men, it's celebrating the past, say, 8 years rather than the past 50 years. But again, back to what we had discussed, it's hard to put those other guys back in their suit. And aside from recasting them with younger people looking like who they were, which wouldn't be the same. You know, you want Harrison Ford to be Han Solo. You don't want some other guy to be Han Solo.
Plus, even if you, let's say for the sake of argument, that everybody was in tip-top shape and they look exactly like they always did, you can't really craft a story in, 74 minutes that gives each of them their allotted time, because then you kind of step away from other characters. So I assume that the original plan or the original wishes might have been to have the 3 more current Doctors do the whole thing, but not all of the surviving Doctors at the same time.
I agree. There was precedent for this. When they did the 10th anniversary, William Hartnell was too ill to actually appear on set. So it was basically Patrick Troughton and John Pertwee who did the main acting, and the 3 of them were together, but as I said, not really together. The 20th anniversary had the 5 Doctors, but it was really only the 4 Doctors. And in reality, it was only 3 Doctors because the first Doctor had been recast and Tom Baker chose not to participate. When we finally get to the 50th anniversary, everybody wants the 11 Doctors, but it's just not going to work. You can't have everybody, and then you have companions. You would need a 5-hour show.
No kidding.
And then it's not drama. Then it's basically everybody comes out for their bow.
It's the greatest hits. No, and it's a shame that Eccleston, pulled a Connery, basically.
Well, that's the sad thing. Tom Baker did it years ago. He's 80 years old now, and he said he regrets that he did it. It was just a little too raw for him at the time, being basically a year or 2 after he left. Eccleston, I don't really know what the man is like. He seems like he's a very serious actor, and he does what he's expected to, and he tries to do it well. In this case, though, something just made him not want to come back. And even if it was for a day's work, a couple hours work, he could have done it, but I'm not him. I mentioned once before, I don't think if my job let me go or if I had bad blood with my job, I'd want to go back for the Christmas party.
Right.
It's just hard to put myself in his shoes because I'm a fan and I wanted him, but I kind of understand, I guess, he's got to do it the way he's got to do it.
Well, let's try to summarize a little bit of the actual story.
Well, to give you a travel log of beginning, middle, and end, it's basically the Ward Doctor is revealed, and we kind of see through his eyes what he has to go through in the decision of ending the Time War. And it ties in with the 2 most recent Doctors and ultimately how they play a part in that decision, or either helping him make that decision or finding a way to change that decision with a few other exciting pieces.
Right. Obviously, this is science fiction, so there's always an alternative way of doing things.
Theoretically, the Doctors are not supposed to cross their timelines, but as we've said for other episodes, it's happened. And generally something happens. They wind up in these extenuating circumstances, which puts them together. And then by the end, we're supposed to believe, well, when they're back in their regular timeline, they've kind of forgotten this happens because it's not supposed to have happened or something like that. And kind of the case here, bunch of pieces all fitting together, bringing them together to save themselves.
But we still theoretically don't know the fate of the home planet and stuff like that. It still leaves it up there, in the ether.
My impression is that once we get into the regeneration of the 11th into the 12th Doctor, which itself is basically the 11th to the 12th Doctor, but with the addition of John Hurt, it's hard to say that Peter Capaldi won't be the 13th Doctor, because basically he's regenerated many times.
John Hurt is the Ward Doctor. He's not dealing in numbers. He's dealing in titles, I guess. He's a special doctor.
And as far back as the 70s, the Doctor is supposed to have 13 selves, 12 regenerations. There will be a 13th Doctor, and that's supposed to be the end. But as we've talked about, and other people I'm sure have read, the Master has overcome that. I'm sure it's been overcome in other side stories, that the expectation is the show is not going to end when Peter Capaldi decides to retire.
Oh, of course.
However,
I doubt it.
It's a matter of us finding out now how they're going to overcome that problem. And I assume the big arc is going to be either Peter Capaldi dealing with him possibly being the last Doctor, or finding Gallifrey, which will somehow allow him to have more regenerations, like the Master was given more regenerations, something
There's
like that.
There's got to be a loophole.
Yeah, it's a race now to find Gallifrey. Which will come first, finding Gallifrey or him possibly dying? And I think that's kind of what we have to see for the future, because Stephen Moffat has said this is the beginning of the next generation of Doctor Who, not an ending, not a middle. It's just the start, the beginning of what comes next. So I think he has a bit of a plan, and we'll see where it goes after that.
Why don't you tell us a little bit about the best surprise of the 50th anniversary of the Day of the Doctor, the ending scene?
Well, to me, I did have a problem, like I said, with not being able to put in the old Doctors, the classic Doctors. And as much as I understood it, it was a bit of a disappointment that it wasn't going to happen. And up until the end, everybody swore, hey, I'm not involved. I'm not involved. They haven't called me. And clearly the McGann surprise was the first hint that maybe this isn't quite so. And as it's going along, all the Doctors get called into service. Now, they don't fully appear. They're basically on video screens, probably using stock footage and altered lines of dialogue or something like that. But to me, it was just crazy. I was so thrilled to see that they wound up working them in. And then a little nod to the Ninth Doctor was a piece of stock footage of real, not on a video screen, like real footage from the show, which I was thrilled that they threw that in, at least out of respect for the Eccleston fans.
Oh, yeah.
And then, oh my God.
And then the big one.
The big reveal was, no, not just the 12 Doctors, all 13 of them. And we get a close-up shot of Peter Capaldi, who has yet to be regenerated into, but since this is a time travel show and the Time Lords are supposed to know everything going forward, they didn't just leave it at Matt Smith. They threw in Capaldi, which was such a huge, I was yelling. I was so excited.
Well, there might have been more than 13 or 12 or 11 TARDISes floating around there at the end. You never know. You're going to have to slow-mo it and count them.
Yeah, we'll have to check it on the Blu-ray. But basically, they brought it right up to as fresh as it can be.
But I'm talking about after this. My favorite part was even after all this.
Well, the denouement, which you can look that up, was a real big surprise. And basically, as much as I'm a fan of Peter Davison, as much as I'm a fan of Paul McGann, Eccleston, the real Doctor Who was Tom Baker, because he was there the longest. He's the one with most people were introduced to the show by. He's the most iconic of the old Doctors because of the scarf. You just say Doctor Who and the scarf, and people, bam, know Tom Baker. Thank God for Eccleston, David Tennant, and Matt Smith, but Tom Baker is the guy that kind of kept the show going through all those years of the 70s. And lo and behold, he makes a cameo appearance, not really as the Doctor, but could be,
He was
it's
the
going to be
to
left,
me.
it's gonna
He was the Doctor, not wanting to say he was the Doctor. I mean, to me,
yeah,
he was there.
It's basically was that little bit of a treat, and it's to the fans' own conjecture what you want to believe. Is he playing the other character, or is he playing this character? And I feel like that's exactly what they needed. They needed that little bit, that little kick, and I was thrilled. You couldn't not like seeing him. The man's 80 years old. He won't be with us much longer.
And he looked good. I mean, looked good. He's old, but he looked like he was into it and he was participating and he genuinely looked like he was honest about it,
He still has the twinkle in his eye and the charm of his fourth Doctor. So it was nice to see that little bit extra to bring it on home, basically.
Now, not to be disappointed for the many people who still wanted to see the remaining, doctors that are still around, and some of them are, working in the industry and stuff like that, we get another little treat.
The final thing of the Day of the Doctor that was a little special treat for the fans was that we see John Hurt's regeneration into what is supposed to be Eccleston, the Ninth Doctor. However, it brings it right up to the edge, but doesn't go over.
Yeah, you couldn't tell his face exactly. You kind of thought that's what...
right to his eye. Most fans have said that if it went just another frame or two, you would have seen the actual shape of probably Eccleston, but it brings you to as the eyes are forming. Now, we're going to read more in the next couple weeks. I wonder if they left it like that in case they want to add something later down the line, in case the charm of it Eccleston sees and they can add it to the DVD. I don't know. That's just, again, me hoping for the best, I think. But it's probably best not to have done a fake regeneration using the old stuff, or maybe using the parts of his regeneration when he turned into David Tennant. So this is probably the best way to do it. We know where it goes. It doesn't have to be seen. But part of me hopes that somehow there's that little bit that he'll show up or somehow give his okay to let them do it. I don't know what I'm hoping for, but it would be a nice surprise somewhere down the line.
Well, tell us about the additional, more lighthearted bonus material, if you will.
Well, like I said, all these surprises and all these little things had been leaked out, and press footage and set footage and little hints of who's in it and who's not in it. And around October, this footage came out, these pictures that were supposed to be like real pictures of Peter Davison and Sylvester McCoy standing outside of the BBC, kind of in outfits reminiscent of their old costumes. And
but they look like they were homemade.
Yeah, they were picket signs saying, no classic, no Doctor Who, have a heart, give us a part. Little signs like that, as if they were picketing BBC for roles. And I'm like, wow, everybody's saying this has to have something to do with, it could have been just PR. It could have been just like a little bit of goodwill. Those guys went out there. They have a sense of humor, but, they're not in the show, but they're celebrating the 50th because they were a part of it, blah, blah, blah. Well, it turns out the fifth Doctor, Peter Davison, came up with this idea for all the classic Doctors to somehow participate and try to find a way to get into the 50th anniversary special. And it was called the Five-ish, in parentheses, Doctors Reboot, because the show was called The Five Doctors back in 1983.
Right, and it's all about how, as actors, they all want to be in it, but they don't want to admit, or they don't want to let it be known, so they're all kind of trying to sneak their way into stuff.
I don't know who gets credit for this style of television. I don't know if it's Larry David for Curb Your Enthusiasm, or if it's been around, but lately it's really become something special, because actors can portray themselves. Maybe it was Being John Malkovich. Maybe that's where this style of storytelling came from. But it's actors portraying themselves in a kind of goofy way, but making it really entertaining. And what happens is the surviving classic Doctors are trying to connive a way into the 50th anniversary, and they're in it, playing characters of themselves, as well as the modern Doctors, other actors and actresses from Doctor Who, the producers,
and their families,
directors,
everybody.
And it really has a little side jokes, some inside jokes, some plain right out in front jokes with the costumes that they're wearing and the manner in which they're dressed and how their families treat them. Sylvester McCoy works on the Hobbit movies, and they tied in those guys.
I never made that
Jackson.
Connection until I looked at him, and he's like, why is he in the Hobbit? Oh my God, that was him.
Yeah, he's in it. And that was almost, too much to ask for. You finally did get them. And they make a joke that they actually sneak onto the set.
Yeah, and they end up actually getting in it in one way through the Daleks and then getting in another way through the, covered up and stuff like that. So it was cute. I like it.
And they had to show it afterwards because they actually show some of the scenes from the episode. So it was nice that they did this. And it was an official production.
Oh, yeah.
Originally, it was just a side idea, but it became an official production that Stephen Moffat sanctioned and actually participated in, ultimately making it another piece of this 50th anniversary puzzle.
It fit great because it was like basically another flavor to this meal they were giving you. It's not exactly like the other thing. It's something a little different. Now, tell us a little bit about your connection to that, because there's a scene where they go somewhere that you're kind of familiar with.
Yeah, the only way that this could have been better is if I could have somehow been a part of the 50th anniversary.
Well, to you at least.
And I have to say, my good fortune allowed me to go to the set of the actual TARDIS and step foot into the set and be on the TARDIS. And I have to tell you, it blows my mind. The only thing that could be better, and for other people to relate to maybe, is if you got on the Enterprise with, Captain Kirk, or if somehow we're riding around in the Aston Martin with James Bond. I don't know. We could go down the line forever. This was a dream come true. I've been a Doctor Who fan since the middle 70s. I got the opportunity to go to Cardiff, Wales, and get on the set, and I felt like Doctor Who for about 5 or 10 minutes, and it blows my mind to see in the anniversary episode and in the Five-ish Doctors, they actually went to the studios. They got behind the scenes. I was in those actual places. I was on the set, and it really was neat to be a part of that. And I really do feel like it was the perfect opportunity, perfect timing, and I'm really thrilled to have been able to share in that in my little way.
That's great. And it's for a change. It's like actually you're not disappointed at what they try to put together. And especially since it was like an octopus. It had so many different arms that they could all kind of fall apart. But here they hit them all. They hit every different little thing they were trying to do. It looks like they hit them right on.
Do you know how you get to a finale or a big episode arc or a big season finale or something, and afterwards everybody's kind of glad it happened, but you get that taste in your mouth that something wasn't quite right? Seinfeld is basically the most recent big disappointment. Star Trek The Next Generation kind of was good, but then they really weren't ending. They were going into the movies, so it was kind of like almost like a season finale, even though it was a series finale. I guess a really satisfying ender that recent fans had was the Breaking Bad. I don't think I read or heard about anybody being too disappointed in that. But I just find somehow it ends, and maybe the sadness of your show going away, and also the expectations, you can never meet the two. And I think this did.
Right, but this isn't even an end. This is just you're in the middle. You're still in the middle somewhere.
There's probably ages to go. But I think classic fans, modern fans, casual fans, people who just tuned in because they heard a bit of the hype, I don't think they could be disappointed, especially when you put all the other pieces, like you said, the other legs of the octopus together, including the books that have come out over the years, the musical soundtrack specials, the interviews, just basically.
And this was a big media event in general, because not only, was it airing on, I personally don't have BBC America, but I was able to find a place to watch it, but they were even airing this in movie theaters.
It aired in about 80 or 90 countries
in 3D
simultaneously. Even. It aired in 3D in movie theaters. It was shown as a feature live, simulcast, and on other nights. And the fact that it's a British show, it's not even, you expect that from like an American show. Like somehow when you see again the finale of Seinfeld or something, they tie it in with so many different things. It's on the Today Show because it's NBC. It's on the Tonight Show.
This was a big deal.
There's on every magazine cover. Well, this was a British show that it's kind of weird in a lot of respects if you just stumble upon it. It worked. Everything was done right.
I can't think of any other British show that has gotten so much attention for a non-serious finale.
Yeah, I guess Downton Abbey is starting to get people talking about it and excited.
But it's a slow burn.
It's not quite the same. Yeah. Maybe in 45 years, it'll be in the same if it lasts that long. But this really made me happy.
Cool. Like I said, I'm glad that you were happy, first of all, because, it's so easy to get disappointed with some of these sci-fi shows. And a majority of the ones shows that we talk about are older shows that we love for some reason, and then when we watch them again, we're kind of disappointed. But this kind of hit it exactly where we wanted to hit it.
Doctor Who will be around a long time. It's sad that Matt Smith's going to be leaving, and at the Christmas special, he will regenerate into Peter Capaldi. I've learned to not be disappointed, and as much as I like Matt Smith, I think they know what they're doing, and I think they're picking a really good actor to go forward. And in the past where I'd be nervous, like, uh-oh, my guy's leaving, I don't feel so bad, and I have confidence that we're all going to be pretty happy next year when Peter Capaldi's series starts.
Yeah, to me, he looks good. I like an older doctor, serious doctor, and I think that's the direction they seem to want to be heading. And I would like to thank James. Thank you, James, for joining me today and going over all of our crazy anniversary Doctor Who material.
And I'd like to thank you guys for listening to this, because Doctor Who is really special to me, and I hope you guys who haven't yet gotten into it, give it a shot.
Cool. On behalf of everybody here at Geek Fest Rants, we will see you next time. Thanks for joining us. Bye-bye.
Clara sometimes asks me if I dream. Of course I dream, I tell her. Everybody dreams. But what do you dream about, she'll ask. Same thing everybody dreams about, I tell her. I dream about where I'm going. She always laughs at that. But you're not going anywhere, you're just wandering about. That's not true. Not anymore. I have a new destination. My journey is the same as yours, the same as anyone's. It's taken me so many years, so many lifetimes, but at last I know where I'm going. Where I've always been going. Home. The long way round.
Stop.